This is the Bizgnus podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
It's COVID. The pandemic is so serious, so widespread, and an end to it seems so distant that it could make one wonder if marketing means anything today. But our guest says savvy marketers can still make impactful campaigns even in the midst of the pandemic. He's Jim Ewel, who pioneered the concept of Agile marketing. Welcome, Jim. Let's start with you telling our viewers and listeners a bit about yourself and your company.
So I've been in marketing for almost 35 years now, and I started out working actually for mainframe software companies back in the day when there were mainframes. And then in 1989, I joined Microsoft. I joined them out of the Chicago office, actually working in sales back then. And then I moved up here to the Seattle area 27 years ago. And I spent a total of 12 years with Microsoft, had a great time, learned a lot, did a lot of interesting things. And then I left in 2001 and took some time off. And then I got into the startup world, and I ran 3 startups here in the Seattle area. One that was focused in the telecom industry, another that was focused on the advertising industry, and the third was in healthcare. All 3 grew fairly rapidly. We managed to sell all 3, and since then I've been sort of semi-retired and semi-consulting. And so my company's just me. But what I've done is to help companies adapt Agile, which is kind of revolutionized software development. I've helped them adapt that to the marketing function because I love marketing, but there's so many things about traditional marketing that actually don't work very well. And I just think that Agile helps marketers, respond to change. I mean, things like we've had this year in 2020, not only with the pandemic, but with the economic impacts of that. They help marketers get more customer focused, and they help them get more of the right things done. So I just get super passionate about that. And my wife said to me, you talk about it all the time. You need to write a book. And, I think part of it was the retirement thing. She wanted me to be busy doing something. And so I've written this book, and it's been well received. I'm very happy I did it.
Well, the book is all about agile marketing, but let's start with the really kindergarten stuff. And when you say agile marketing, I am kind of visualizing somebody on the parallel bars flipping around while marketing, but obviously that's not it. There must be more to it than that.
Well, no, actually, you're getting at a very important thing, which is the difference between what I call little a agile, which is exactly what you're talking about, right? It's the guy on the parallel bars. It's the dog going around the agility course. It's the dictionary definition of agile, right? And you can be a marketer who is little a agile in the sense that, you can adapt to things, you get things done quickly and all that sort of stuff. But what I'm talking about is something that I refer to as big A agile. And what I mean by that is it has a formal definition, it has a set of principles, and it has a very specific process associated with it. The processes, actually, I should say, not one process, called Scrum and Kanban. And the difference is that with big A agile, you're more likely to consistently become little a agile. In other words, you're more likely to have both individuals and teams do the kinds of things that you want them to do: respond to change, get things done quickly, focus on customers, all that sort of stuff. And that's what I focus on, is big A agile. Okay. And implicit in your question is, well, what is agile marketing, right? Well, I mentioned to you earlier, I work for Microsoft, and maybe I just think of it this way, but I think of Agile as an operating system for marketing. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is, how do you get things done? It's not going to tell you, here's your marketing strategy or that sort of thing. What it is going to help you do is get things done. And more importantly than just get things done, it's get the right things done. Okay, which that's what it's all about, and that's how I think about it in terms of marketing.
When you have dealt with marketing problems, you have gone into companies and you've seen marketing. Is it just too ponderous, too many committees, too many review sessions, etc.? Is that what we're talking about? Getting rid of all of that and moving on to the bare bones?
Well, that is part of it. There are too many meetings. There are too many review cycles. Getting stuff to market takes too long. And when it does get to market, oftentimes people will run these campaigns for months, sometimes years at a time. And what happens when you spend a lot of money and you spent 6 months running a campaign? Does ever anybody say, oh, that campaign didn't work? We just, wasted all that money? Nobody does that, right? We're marketers. We're good at stories. And so what we do is we put together what I call vanity metrics. Actually, that's from Eric Ries and the Lean Startup. Vanity metrics are metrics that help us feel good, okay? But they do nothing to move the business forward. What we do as agile marketers instead is to work with sales, work with senior management of the company to figure out what metrics are most important to the business, right? I mean, typically those are things like sales, right? New customers, profitability, those kinds of things. Now, marketing has to look at those numbers, but we also have to look at the behaviors that lead to those numbers. Let me give you an example. Sales, right? Everybody wants more sales. And you could just say, okay, marketing, you're responsible for more sales. Okay. Well, it's not that simple, right? I mean, the sales guys are involved in whether you make more sales, the product is, all that sort of stuff. Marketing's role is to identify those customer behaviors that are going to lead to sales. For example, there's a concept called sales qualified leads, right? So if you're in a B2B business where you're selling to other businesses, right? You want leads of people who really are serious buyers, okay? Same thing for consumer markets like automobiles or things like that. So how do you define what behaviors make them serious, right? It's not they gave you an email, it's okay, they spent half an hour on your website the other day and they visited these 3 other review sites and they did this. Well, if they did all these things, maybe they are a serious lead. And so you want to encourage those behaviors, identify those behaviors, and only pass the serious leads over to sales. That's an example of the kind of thing that we do as agile marketers.
When you go into a company to teach them about capital A agile marketing,
Yes.
what is the biggest problem that you have in getting your concept across to the folks who have to implement it from the front lines?
Well, the interesting thing is I almost never have difficulty with the people on the front lines. They get the concept right away because they're living with the problems. They're living with not enough resources. They're living with the lack of prioritization. They're living with the, they know they want to focus on customers, but aren't sure how to do it and all those sort of things. The issues that I have, and by the way, I also don't usually have issues with very senior management, the CMOs and the senior vice presidents and so forth. It's the middle management layers that I not always, but if I'm going to have a problem, that's where it's going to be. Why is that? Part of the reason is that many of those middle managers were promoted because they did good things as individual contributors, but they often are, some of them, quite frankly, are empire building. They're building these teams. They're building bigger and bigger teams and, trying to do this and that sort of thing. And one of the things that Agile does is it deconstructs those teams. We pull those people away from the middle managers and we put them into what's called cross-functional teams. And we ask the middle managers to change what they do. Instead of managing the work, in other words, handing out work to people and whipping them if they don't get it done, sort of thing. What we ask them to do is to become coaches, like coach people and how to become better at what they're doing. Ask them to become great hiring managers, okay? And also become servant leaders, leaders who are serving their teams by removing obstacles, by helping them negotiate with other teams, get resources, all those kinds of things. And that's a lot of change for those middle managers. And that almost inevitably is the area where it requires some real work and some real help to get them kind of over the hump. And some make it, and quite frankly, some don't.
I wonder, Jim, if you would give our audience an example from real life, from folks you've worked with, of companies that have adopted capital A Agile marketing, and what has happened.
So I have a number of interviews with companies that have adopted Agile marketing in the book, okay? And I got to tell you, I learned as much from them as they learned from me. That's always the wonderful thing about that. So one of them that comes to mind right away is a company called Space Saver. They're out of Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, a small town in Wisconsin. They're the largest employer in that little town. And they make storage solutions for law libraries, for the Navy. They store nuclear torpedoes in a certain way. They have all these sort of niche and unexpected storage solutions, right? And they're sort of a mid-market manufacturer, somebody who you think of as conservative as they come, okay? But they were one of my early adopters of Agile. And one of the things that happened there is that actually at lunch on the first day of training that I had them do, I did an exercise, which I don't always do, but I often do. I asked them to bring in somebody from sales and to join us for lunch. And we brought that guy in and we asked him some questions about what was marketing doing well now? What were they not doing so well? And what was the one thing that marketing could do over the next 30 to 60 days, which would make him happier than a pig in clover, right? And that started them down a road where that particular sales guy became their biggest advocate within the organization. And in fact, later on, when the CEO said, what is this Agile thing anyway? Why are we really doing this? The person who spoke up was the sales guy, okay? And he was a better advocate for them than they could be for themselves because he had that credibility and because he wasn't talking about himself. And, it's very seldom that sales will say a good word about marketing. So, that's just the nature, it's like sibling rivalry, that sort of thing. But so that's an example of the kind of thing that happens, when you implement Agile. And I think particularly when you implement Agile right, the book is called The 6 Disciplines of Agile Marketing. Right? And a lot of people begin Agile by learning these methodologies called Scrum and Kanban, because that's what the developers do who originally developed Agile. I think that's the wrong place to start. And I talk in the book about the first discipline is alignment, okay? And by that, I mean, get aligned, one, on why are you doing Agile and what does success look like and how are you going to measure it? But two, get aligned with sales. Like, go talk to that sales guy and ask him the 3 questions that I mentioned, right? I know, horror of horrors, but go talk to him. And, get that alignment and then also make sure that you're aligned with the strategic imperatives of the organization, right? And do that before you start holding daily stand-ups or building your Kanban board or all these other things that are associated with Agile. Just go out there and get that alignment because that's going to serve you in good stead as you start to do these other things.
Well, does Does Agile marketing work only for profits, or do you see it also working for nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, I've trained a number of nonprofits. So last year in 2019, I mentioned to you before we started this interview that I was in Cleveland, and I was there for an organization which at that time was called Better Angels. They're called Braver Angels today, but they're focused on depolarizing our political system. Yeah, I know, just a minor challenge to do that. So I served as the chief operating officer for them, and we implemented agile marketing at Better Angels. More specifically, also, I've helped a number of educational institutions, right? And these are the ones that I'm thinking of are nonprofit educational institutions, right? The Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, the University of Arizona, some others, okay, to implement them. It has nothing to do with whether you're for profit or not for profit. I mean, if you're a nonprofit, you still have things that you want to measure in terms of your success, okay? And if there's something that you want to accomplish and you can measure it and you can look at the behaviors that lead to those changes that you can measure, then agile marketing fits, and that's pretty much everybody.
So how does Agile marketing work in this age of COVID-19?
Well, it works well. And one of the things that we're seeing is an acceleration of the move to agile in marketing. So at the beginning of the year, there was a survey done. It's the third annual survey of agile marketers. And they found that about 41% of marketers were already practicing agile to some extent. Okay. And that roughly another 20 to 25% expected to finish the year doing agile. Now, we haven't seen the new survey, but anecdotally, it's going to be larger than that. Okay, so we're going to get over 50%. The majority of marketers by the end of 2020, I think, are going to be practicing agile. And part of the reason for that, and I had this, I saw the survey the other day, and I just want to read some things from it. It's the biggest challenges marketing teams faced during the pandemic. Now, what would you suspect those would be? Well, I can tell you what it's not. It's not like having remote workers or managing a remote team or doing things, from home, right? Those things that we kind of associate with what we've had to do during this pandemic. Here's the top. I'll read the top four. Managing shifting priorities and strategies. That's number one biggest challenge, okay, at 52%. Providing visibility or managing fluid plans, changing the way you plan. The lack of bandwidth to quickly create new content, and realigning budget to new initiatives. Now, all those four things are things that we address with Agile, okay? We respond to change over following a plan. That's one of our values in Agile marketing. That addresses directly number two. We prioritize not when we write a 6-month or a year-long plan, but we actually prioritize every week or two when we do our we call it sprint planning. Okay. We budget in a totally different way. That's based not on, we're going to spend this much on advertising and this much on events and that sort of thing, but we're going to spend it this much on this business priority and that sort of thing. So all of these things are things that people are having to do during the pandemic, and agile marketing is really helping them. And I've seen an uptick in terms of people asking me for consulting, and sales of the book are going well, all that sort of thing. It really is appropriate in this time of the pandemic.
So that keeps you guys busy, keeps you as a one-person business busy, running from pillar to post almost, although you probably aren't doing a lot of that in person anymore.
No, I'm not doing it in person, and so that's required me to adapt, which is always fun, So I really enjoy it. I love always learning, always doing something new, always trying to challenge myself. That's just part of what I like doing, which is probably why I gravitated towards agile marketing.
Tell our audience again the name of the book, which has a big long subtitle.
I don't know if if I can remember the entire subtitle, but it's the 6 disciplines of agile marketing. And now you're going to make me look up the rest of it. Okay. I know it's here somewhere.
Well, we'll type it out on the screen.
Yeah, you type it out.
We'll do that for you.
Helping you get better business results, something in that.
Something like that. Something like
that.
Yes.
Yes, I forget exactly.
Now, where can our listeners and viewers get more information about the company?
Yeah, so you can find us on the web at agilemarketing.net. All one word there.
And what would you like to talk about that I haven't been right enough to ask you?
Well, you haven't asked me about the second thing in the book, besides the 6 disciplines, is something I call the 4 shifts. Okay, so the 6 disciplines are about individual marketers and teams. The 4 shifts are about the shifts that organizations as a whole need to make. Okay, and these are things like a shift from a focus on outcomes versus outputs. Okay, so don't think of your marketing as we're a content factory or we're an advertiser. We put out ads. That's output. Okay, you want to say, oh, we're guys who generate outcomes like more sales, greater profitability, more new customers, all those kinds of things. Okay, so that sort of thing. A second thing is the focus on continuous improvement over kind of a campaign mentality. So many marketers think in terms of campaigns. They think we're going to plan campaigns, we're going to build campaigns, we're going to execute campaigns, and we're going to declare victory. I don't want to see that. What I want to see is you go out and very quickly test some of your assumptions behind what you would call a campaign. Try those out and see if they're going to work, and try them at small scale. And only after you've proven that your assumptions are right or they're not right and you've replaced them with other things, only after you've proven that this is going to work, then you scale up. Okay, but do that in a very iterative, fast way to make sure that you're really delivering value. The third shift is moving from an internal focus to a customer focus. And I talk about ways to do that that go beyond just happy talk that everybody says they're customer focused. And then the fourth shift is from top-down decision-making to decentralized decision-making. And I really think that's a critical thing in marketing these days, because no one has all the answers. And we also want the top decision makers, we want them focused on the things where they have unique expertise and where they can really make a difference. We don't want them approving every ad or, all these other things that they do today. So that's what I would say.
That sounds almost like a frustration that you've had to deal with in the past.
I have, but I also have been the top decision maker. I was CEO of 3 startups, and one of the things that I really learned was when I was not the right person to make a decision. I really found that it was better if I could go home at night knowing that I could depend on this person or that person to take care of this area, and I didn't have to worry about it. I mean, that's probably selfish of me, but it actually worked well for them as well and for the company.
You've been watching the Bizgnus podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@bizgnus.com. Thanks for watching.